Late at night, a female corpse dressed in revealing clothes appeared. There was actually a plastic bag over her head. The scene was filled with a strong smell of blood. Blood-red shoe prints remained in the surrounding soil. It seemed that the murderer was in a great hurry when committing the crime. Jade, a police officer from the Vice Squad who found the body, speculated that the deceased was most likely a prostitute. She probably lost her life when she encountered a psychologically distorted, perverted customer. While doing business, he even made offensive jokes about the deceased on the spot. The disgusting behavior disgusted Benson from the Special Victims Unit. After investigation, the deceased was named Laura, a newly adult black prostitute. Judging from the wounds on the body, Laura died of suffocation after being violently beaten. Such a perverted modus operandi immediately made the captain think that this case was similar to a homicide case last month. The deceased was also a prostitute, and even the way of death was exactly the same. What's more bizarre is that no identity documents were found on either of them. The police searched the database, but never found a matching fingerprint record. This made the case even more confusing. In view of the deceased's identity as a prostitute, the Special Victims Unit decided to get favorable clues from the deceased's peers. Taylor and Benson learned from the women on the Vice Street. In this line of work, being stiffed or beaten by clients is a common occurrence. Just then, an elderly prostitute told Officer Taylor, a colleague named Annie also encountered an incident of having a plastic bag put over her head. Because the Vice Squad had carried out a cleanup operation on this, the woman only knew that Annie usually solicited customers on 9th Avenue. Since Annie was the only victim who narrowly escaped, Benson and Taylor immediately rushed to the destination, only to find that it was the territory of male technicians. The three men had strong and thick muscles on their arms. The police learned from them that Annie had previously stolen business here, and was severely reprimanded by these men before disappearing without a trace. Now that this key witness can't be found, Benson and Taylor had to ask Jade, the officer who found the body. The other party was having dinner with his colleague Daniel at that time. However, in the face of the two's inquiries, Jade refused to provide any clues about the victim. After all, there had been a conflict between them not long ago. On the contrary, Daniel, who was standing aside, provided information for everyone, but in the absence of substantial evidence, the Special Victims Unit had to refocus on the body. The autopsy results showed that Laura did die of suffocation from a plastic bag, and the madness of the murderer's violence was simply shocking. The attacker beat Laura's face beyond recognition. It was clearly a crime committed in extreme anger. However, the autopsy showed that Laura had not been violated in any way. There were no drugs in her system either. After all, this isn't common in the special group of prostitutes, and the deceased paid great attention to healthy eating and beauty. This major discovery instantly made the case more complicated. Just as the case reached a stalemate, a colleague suddenly brought good news. The missing persons database showed that a girl's physical characteristics were extremely similar to the deceased. Her name was Laura. The girl suddenly went missing 2 days ago. Benson and Taylor went to Laura's home, according to the address in the information, only to find that it was an upscale community. Laura's parents were both educated intellectuals with refined speech. The police learned from them that Laura was an outstanding student at a prestigious university. She was very well behaved, and usually actively engaged in welfare volunteer work. Taylor had to subtly reveal to them Laura might be engaged in special service work. The moment the couple saw Laura's photo, the girl's mother instantly broke down in tears, and even angrily slapped Taylor. After all, who would have thought that a well-behaved girl from a wealthy family would take this illegal path? However, one thing is certain, the murderer seems to be deliberately targeting prostitutes. That night, Laura, dressed in revealing clothes, unfortunately became an unlucky victim. Fortunately, the police obtained key clues from Laura's parents. She had a close boyfriend named Kevin. The police quickly set out to find him for questioning, but during the questioning, they found strange contradictions. When Kevin heard the news of Laura's death, his first reaction was a look of shock. Kevin mentioned in an extremely calm tone, the two had originally planned to have a candlelit dinner on the night of the incident, but he couldn't get in touch with Laura no matter what, and thought she didn't respond because she was busy with work. Kevin repeatedly emphasized that Laura was a gentle and well-behaved girl who would never do anything deviant. Her entertainment activities were limited to going to clubs with community colleagues. However, what was strange was that Kevin didn't seem sad about Laura's death, as if he was just talking about an ordinary thing. To prove his innocence, Kevin even took the initiative to hand over his good brother's business card, and swore that he was betting on football with his good brother on the night of the incident. The clue broke off again here, because Laura had worked as a volunteer in the community during her lifetime. Coincidentally, the place of death was near the community. Benson and Taylor quickly went to investigate. The community teacher reported that Laura had a very good character and had no conflicts with anyone. When asked if there were any abnormal people, the teacher said that a parolee student named Mike had not come to school for several days. Based on this key clue, Benson and Taylor quickly found this dilapidated apartment. According to the address, there was actually a strong rotten smell floating in the corridor. The next second, the other person died of a drug overdose. The body had been dead for at least a week. Judging from Mike's time of death, it was obvious that he wasn't the one who killed Laura. It was only when everyone sorted out the clues at the police station that they truly realized how terrifying the murderer was. This serial killer's modus operandi was extremely rigorous. He must wear latex gloves every time he commits a crime. He only tortures and kills but never violates the victims. No fingerprints or DNA traces could be found at the scene. However, the murderer wasn't flawless. The police found spilled talcum powder at the scene of the previous crime. There were no other clues besides that. Fortunately, there's always a way out. Just as the investigation reached a stalemate, there was finally news about Annie, the survivor the police were looking for. Someone saw her soliciting customers on another street. The police quickly went there according to the address. Annie ran away as soon as she saw the police. Taylor took a lot of effort to calm her down. Annie recalled the thrilling moment that night with lingering fear. At that time, the murderer suddenly shone a strong flashlight into her eyes. Just as her vision became blurred, the murderer quickly took out a plastic bag and put it over Annie's head. She was about to suffocate. In a panic, Annie mustered all her strength and scratched the murderer's private parts, which allowed her to escape. Due to the Vice Squad's prejudice against people in special professions, Annie didn't dare to call the police at all. After all, they wouldn't stand up for her. At the police station, based on Annie's description, Benson and Taylor immediately simulated the murderer's crime process. But at this moment, the two noticed a key detail. When being shown with a flashlight, most people would cover their eyes from the front, but Laura covered her eyes from the side. This indicated that the murderer held the flashlight in a very special posture. Obviously, the light was shown from top to bottom, combined with the fact that the murderer liked to wear latex gloves when committing crimes. Everyone suddenly realized that this serial killer was most likely a police officer too. Based on this breakthrough, Benson and Taylor went to ask the prostitutes again. However, everyone unanimously stated that Jade from the Vice Squad was the most suspicious. He hated this special profession extremely, and he often insulted and beat them in the name of rectification. Given that Jade was also the first to arrive at the crime scene, all kinds of signs seemed extremely suspicious. Since there was insufficient evidence, the captain decided to take action personally. He specially invited Jade's superior to have dinner together. From what the superior said, although Jade had a bad temper, he had no obvious violent tendencies. Most of the time, he was just putting on an act. On the contrary, Jade's colleague Daniel was a weirdo with strange behaviors. He was the same officer who provided clues to Benson last time. Files show that Daniel has an extremely cold-blooded personality, and is even a violent maniac. He once beat prostitutes twice while on duty, and he has a bad record of domestic violence against his ex-wife, but every time it was left unresolved. According to the address on the other's file, Benson and Taylor rushed to investigate. The neighbors revealed to them that Daniel's mother was also a prostitute. Every time she served clients, she would drive him out of the house. Daniel could even hear the sounds of luxury in the room. Perhaps this painful childhood experience made him deeply hate the profession of prostitutes. The two immediately returned to the police station and spent the night going through all the records of Daniel's 31-year career. However, the results shocked everyone. The 18 unsolved cases in the files, the victims were all prostitutes, but when the police found Daniel, he appeared unusually calm. Faced with the police's murder charges, Daniel quickly admitted his crimes. He described each murder process in detail, as if he were admiring his own work. Daniel sarcastically said that his colleagues around him hadn't noticed that he was a serial killer for 31 years. If it weren't for Annie's narrow escape, he might really have been able to retire peacefully with this secret. But what everyone didn't expect was that Daniel insisted that he didn't kill Laura. After all, the victims he chose were all from remote areas, and they were deliberately placed in a specific posture. However, the violent beating that Laura suffered was more severe. The body wasn't placed in a specific posture, more like an impulsive temporary crime by a novice. The experienced captain guessed that the murderer who killed Laura was most likely someone close to her. In view of Kevin's abnormal reaction earlier, the police immediately became suspicious of him. Taylor and Benson quickly found Kevin's good brother. Based on the business card Kevin had provided, under the deterrence of the law, the timid friend finally told the truth. It turned out that the two were not together on the night of the incident. Kevin was actually two-timing. On one hand, he was happily getting along with his fiancée. On the other hand, he was having an affair with Laura outside, and Laura wasn't a so-called prostitute. She just occasionally wore revealing clothes to go to nightclubs, but was accosted by Kevin, who had been eyeing her. A one-night stand followed. Perhaps the girl had been pestering Kevin. The angry Man then imitated the modus operandi of the serial killer, and brutally killed Laura. Since the police currently have no conclusive evidence, the only clue is the half-shoe print left at the scene. The technical department quickly inspected this footprint. It was a pair of size 11 Italian brand men's shoes. There is only one exclusive store selling them in the entire high-end mall. Kevin's name actually appeared on the list of this high-priced luxury item sold for a limited time. Given the other's working-class income, Taylor firmly believed that he would never bear to throw away these shoes. The police immediately applied for a search warrant. However, after searching all the places where Kevin had stayed, there was still no trace of the target shoes. Benson speculated that the shoes might be hidden in Kevin's residence, just as the police were heading to the destination. This pervert was in a hurry to go on vacation with his fiancée, obviously guilty of something. Kevin initially pretended to be innocent. When the lie was exposed, he immediately dropped his pretense. This playboy not only deceived Laura's feelings, he even made many perverted and unreasonable demands. However, Laura, being a well-behaved girl, didn't satisfy him at that time. That was why Kevin brutally killed her. He thought he could hide his past, but he never expected that. He foolishly wore the same pair of shoes he used during the crime. This undoubtedly became irrefutable evidence of his crime. In the end, he reaped what he sowed. This case seems to be solved, but the hidden social issues behind it are thought-provoking. The victim named Laura was completely innocent. During the day, she was an enthusiastic college student volunteer. It is really distressing that she was unfortunately killed as a prostitute at night. After all, this is the result of class prejudice. No one truly regards prostitutes as dignified individuals. What is most shocking is the policeman Daniel. The setting of him committing crimes in a police uniform is really contradictory, stimulated by his mother who was engaged in the sex industry in his childhood. When he grew up, he used this as an excuse to retaliate against society. Regarding the police badge as a license to kill, just thinking about it makes people shudder. At first, everyone thought the murderer was a perverted client, but they never thought it was a fellow policeman. No sooner had the serial killer been captured than a copycat, Kevin, emerged. This person deliberately imitated others' methods to shift the blame. In the end, he was caught because of a pair of shoes. His stupidity is simply incredible, and this case is also adapted from a real event. Joel Rifkin, the New York Ripper, is simply the American version of the devil among us. In 4 years, he hunted and killed 17 women on the streets of New York. His modus operandi is as cruel as that shown in the film. The root cause of this tragedy is entirely the society's indifference and neglect towards marginalized groups. When no one cares about the life and death of prostitutes, evil will naturally spread unchecked. Today's commentary ends here. Those who are interested can speak actively in the comments section. See you next time.